All right, as people jump on, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everybody, Remote Nation. My name is David. I'm hosting our second Knowledge Drop series here with Ankur from Ikigai over here in Mexico City. And we are going to be talking about freeing up your time. So just a quick little reminder, the format of this will be 15 minutes or so presentation, and then Ankur will be answering your questions. So please make sure if you have questions to use the Q&A box down at the bottom of the screen. Type them in whenever you want. He will just answer all of them at the very end. And we are recording this, and we'll have this up a little bit faster this time, probably within the next week or so. Additionally, created a knowledge drop channel on Slack. I'll remind everybody at the end to have more information and a little bit of homework in there this time around. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Ankur.
Hi, thanks very much, David. Hi, everybody. Thanks for being here. I appreciate that we're all in different time zones, and it might not be the best time for everybody, but I'm so glad you guys could make it. Let me just switch to slides here. Okay, so welcome. We're talking about freeing up your time today. And yeah, this is for me, it's a really great thing to talk about. I hope that all of you find this valuable. Note that the topic of this talk is a call to action, free up your time. What I would request all of you to think of this next 30 minutes as an investment of your time. So it'd be really great if, as a result of attending this session, you can actually look to redeem or recover at least 30 minutes of your time in the near future, if not more. We all know remote nations terminology, so this is a knowledge dropping session. And what I'm about to drop in this session is a few things. These are basically the key takeaways from this session. So I want to first talk about the fact that your time is much more valuable than you might currently believe. Number two, you can free up a lot of your time by adopting a very simple framework that's worked for many people, and that's what I'm going to share with you. And number three, please do take this away with you from this session. Data is key. And the impact, if you have data, can be multiplicative. So in terms of timing this thing, I'd like to say that 6 months is all it takes to have more free time than you would ever imagine was possible. And why I'm doing this in the first place is I'm fascinated by the power of free time. And what I'm going to describe to you in the next 15 odd minutes is something that has actually changed my life. There was a time when I used to be overwhelmed with a lot of work and not having enough time, and there's all this stuff to do, and it's become very different today. So I'm very, very excited to share this with you. I've been conducting workshops on this topic for the last 3 years, and during remote year, actually, I recently just launched an online course on this topic. I think this has all come together because of my background across 3 different areas. So I've worked in the area of data science, management consulting, and entrepreneurship, and somehow, what I've learned in all those areas has come up to this framework that I'm going to share with you. Like David said, we have a Q&A button down there, so please just keep putting your questions there as they come to your mind, but I will take questions. I'll start answering them in the end. I want to start by saying that nobody contests against having more time, right? More time. We'd all love it. Whenever I mention this to people, mostly what people think of is, how would you go about creating more time? The first thing that comes to people's minds is, oh, so that means I can work less, and hence I'll have more time. That's interesting because most of us, I think, this sort of suggests that for most of us, a lot of our time is going towards work these days, right? So more time means less work. But few of us actually feel like doing more work with more time. So I've heard people, what would you do if you had more time? You'd probably spend more time with friends or family. It would give us more time to pursue hobbies. For us here at Remote here, that's probably a no-brainer that more time would mean more travel. A lot of us work as freelancers or in independent ways. So if we have more time, we can work more, which means we can earn more money. So more time might mean more money for some of us. It might just mean more time at the bar. Or we can invest it. So more time for more personal growth, more time for professional growth. In short, more whatever. So with more time, yeah, there's just so much we can do. However, before starting, I just want to say something that I think a lot of us often forget: the true worth of our time. And here I want to share what personally motivates me to free up as much my time as I can. Some of you might relate to this. I believe that in our world, there are enough problems to solve. Right? There are enough challenges to undertake. There are more than enough people who we can help. And there's just lots and lots of good things to do, right? And also, this is going to be very, very true for all of us on remote here. Each one of us is passionate about something, right? But most of us are not able to do enough just because we don't have enough time. Mostly we're stuck up with work and so many other things we need to do these days. So if we did have enough time, wouldn't the world be a much better place? That's my personal view, right? And there's a world, with a nice smile on it. If all of us had more time, we could just do so much more. However, before we start going out and following our passions and doing stuff, we do need to figure out how to make use of this resource in the best way. And here's something I want to throw in for remote here. This is something that all of us, of course, will be, hearing at least 12 times, if not more, during remote here. We must put our own oxygen mask before assisting others, right? So before we can go out and make the world a better place, we need to see how we can make ourselves better at managing our time, at being more optimal, all that. So time management is not, at all a new subject or something. There's lots of approaches out there, lots of literature out there. What I want to discuss with you guys today over the next 10, 15 minutes is something that's worked very practically for myself, and it's actually been working for a lot of other people who've tried it. A very, very practical approach to manage time is based on the simple phrase, time is money. Some of us might know that this was actually first coined by Benjamin Franklin back in 1700 something. So we've all heard about the fact that time is money. What I've done is I've taken this and gone deeper into it. Something that this allows us to do is to draw an analogy between time management and financial planning. So if time was money, the way you would manage your time, could be somewhat similar to where you manage money. And what I've been doing for the last 3 years is applying lots of concepts from financial planning, very simple ones, right? Nothing complicated, and try to apply them in different ways to time management. And I've developed lots of interesting techniques, hacks, call them whatever you want, but they've actually worked, and that's the best thing. So what I want to do in this session is not kind of go through too many things, but just sort of share with you the basic framework that I've developed, which at a high level, under which I've been able to do all this stuff. So how do you apply concepts from financial planning into time management? And this might sound theoretical, but bear with me for this one slide. I'm going to give you a sense of the framework, and then we'll go into how to implement it. So there's 3 basic steps that I have to say. If we can do this, it will help us free up a lot of our time. Some of these words you would have heard. It's very common stuff, but I just want to put the order and the approach is important. So the first step is planning. And when I say planning your time, I basically mean budgeting your time, right? So thinking before you start doing stuff. I'll let you do this on a weekly basis. You can even do it on a daily basis. Think about where you want to spend your time. And it's just like some people do with money, right? You want to plan ahead where you want to spend your time. This sounds very obvious, but I'll tell you how important this can be. After that, you want to track your time. So it's very important to know where you're actually spending your time, right? Because if you have a budget and you don't know where you're spending it, it really doesn't make, it's not much help. So there are various different ways of tracking time. There are some apps and some tools that can help you do it in some ways. But I like talking of the idea of timesheets, the good old way of manually logging your time. So just imagine for a second that you've planned where all you want to spend your time. When I say where all, I basically mean what kind of activities, how many hours you want to devote to what activity on a weekly or daily basis. You then track where you're actually spending your time. And the third step, which is extremely important, is reviewing. So I suggest doing this on a weekly basis. You then review your timesheets and your plan. So you're basically analyzing the data. So you're looking at, where did you think you will spend your time and where did you actually spend your time? Trust me, they're very, very different things. What's very important to note in this framework is the fact that this is an iterative process. And I think that's a place where a lot of us have, I hear this all the time. People say, we made plans, they don't work. Tracking is really difficult. Okay, I'll review it and it'll all be messed up, then what? So the important thing to note is that it's an iterative process, right? It doesn't stop after step 3. You plan where you want to spend your time, you track your time, you review how you did, and then you use that to replan it. And this just never stops. It keeps going on. just this simple set of 3 steps, of course with a lot more detail, actually lets you free up a lot of your time. And here I'll share with you some of the outcomes that this can lead to much sooner than you might think. One of the things that I observed was, it actually leads to a 75 to 90% reduction in the time spent on some tasks. So I'll give you my favorite example here. Something that we can all relate to is email, right? When I first started tracking my time, of course, I had no clue of how much time I spent on email. But I discovered in a couple of weeks of tracking that, this was around 3 years ago, I was spending 14 hours every week on emails, whatever kind of emails that was. And back then I was logging, so I had this concept of maintaining a time budget, and I had 60 hours a week that I was tracking. And after that 14 hours, I discovered I was going to emails. That's like almost 1/4 of my time, right? And I was shocked to see this. But literally just by tracking the amount of time I was spending on emails, reviewing it every week, I started asking myself, oh, do I need to answer this email now? Can I do it later? And within a few weeks, that 14 hours came down to 9 or 10 hours, right? And to cut a long story short, today I spend less than 3 hours a week on emails. So that's like almost 80% reduction, right? And I still do all the emails. So just a lot of things happen as you do this process, and you can actually cut down. It literally does free up a number of hours every week. And again, another example, one of my friends back in India, he runs a nonprofit. So he back then was basically, I asked him how many hours a week he works, and his answer was 45, which is already a lot of it. A lot of us would envy that. But I said, this is really cool. You just need to work 45 hours. He says, no, it's a lot of work, but most of his work was operational. He has this team of 20 people. It was going pretty smoothly. He says, listen, I don't need to struggle. I'm not too ambitious, but I make sure everything goes well. And he was spending 45 hours a week on average. And he said his routine had been pretty consistent over the last few years. So, and he liked what I was talking about. So we'll come to how to implement this thing, but I shared a few Excel sheet templates with him. He started tracking his time. He did some stuff. And in less than a month, he told me that his 45 hours had reduced to 25 hours. So he said, Ankur, I've got 20 extra hours every week just by doing this. I'm still getting all my work done. So that's how powerful this is. It does help you gain control of your time, because you know that this week I'm going to spend 10 hours doing meetings, 6 hours doing phone calls, 14 hours doing this, and I have this much free time. Just doing this, and it takes a while to get the hang of it, but once you start following this practice, it just gives you a lot more control of your time. It's helped me a lot to prioritize. Just having all the data there, doing it all, it really helps to prioritize, and that's a big time saver. A few intangible things, it gives you the confidence that you have enough time because you've thought through it carefully. And net, what it's actually led me to do is I've actually quantified this, and it's led to a more than 400% increase in my productivity. I think that's the bottom line. A lot of people say this is crazy. How can you talk a 400%? Most of people who have shared this stuff with us say, even if we can gain 25% extra time, that would be great. But this is really game changer. It can do things really wonderfully. So yeah, now this all sounds good in theory. It's a very simple. I'm just saying 3 steps. It might sound a bit wishy-washy, but what I want to suggest is that of course it doesn't make sense unless we implement it. And you can easily implement it with this tool called Time Vault. This is a tool that I created. Once I started seeing the impact of this, and people started asking me for how they could do it, I put this tool together. This is around 2.5 years ago. It's available on that website. Anybody can go there, create an account. Of course, it's free, and you can use it. It allows you to implement these 3 steps that we just talked. And the way I view Time Vault is, so I say if you were to set up an account on Time Vault, I like to call that your time account. And I suggest that we think of it like a bank account. Now imagine not having a bank account, right? The way we would look at money, the way we would deal with, the way we would manage it would be so much more difficult. With a bank account, it's so easy. That's where you keep your money. You spend it from there. You can go back and see how much you earn, how much you spend. It's all the data is there essentially, and it allows you to manage it all. So I like to think of this as a time account. On Time Vault, you can create a time account where you manage your time. And I won't go into the detail of this tool here, but I'll just show you some snapshots to give you a sense. This is a screenshot of what you'll see when you log into your time account. This is the planner sheet. So here you can actually create a time budget, allocate different things. You can change it. You can do a lot of stuff here. This is the planning step. There's another sheet called timesheet, where the entire framework is set. It's been designed to be relatively easy. You can easily log your time here and allocate it different categories. And basically, this is the tracking step. And then finally, there's a reviewer sheet where you can go whenever you want. I do this on a weekly basis. And it adds up all the numbers for you. It shows up where you thought you would spend your time, where you planned to, and where you actually did. Right? And this allows you to review your time in a very, very easy way. So yeah, now, I mean, if I was to say, what is this thing all about? How do you actually free up your time? In my learning, it's basically two things. And I would like to say that's all about data and regular reflection. So when I say data, basically, this is the kind of questions that you can answer if you have data. What all do you spend your time on? Now, if I was to ask anyone, this question, obviously we have answers, but it's only when we have data in front of us can we really be sure of the answer, right? How do you organize your time? It's easy to say this, but unless you start, getting data in front of you, it's never going to be accurate. This is the best question. How much time do you spend on each category? I've done numerous workshops on this, and you people have done this. We always get it wrong. It's only when you see the data in front of you that you realize where you're actually spending your time, and it's normally different from what we think. What did you do this week? Right? Again, we need the data to answer that question. Is that what you really did? What did you achieve this week? So all these things become a lot more easier and accurate to answer once you have data. When I talk about regular reflection, I talk about questions like this. Am I doing what I think I'm doing? So if you have the data, you know what exactly you're doing. You start thinking, could I do it differently? Right? Let me give you a small story here. So when I started tracking my time this way, it just reveals very interesting things. So one of the things that I noticed, of course I don't do this now on remote here, but before at one point, I noticed that I was spending around 6 to 7 hours every week on cab rides, right? And I was like, wow, that's a lot of time waste. On the other hand, and these things keep evolving as you track them, right? You start tracking different categories of activities and things. So this doesn't happen on day one, but a few weeks into this thing, you realize. So one of the things I was tracking was phone calls. So I also noticed that I was spending more than 6-7 hours a week on phone calls. Just by looking at the data week after week, it struck me, listen, I'm spending 5, 6, 7 hours on cabs, and I'm spending so much time on phone calls. Could I do it differently? I started scheduling all my phone calls to be on the times when I'll be in the cab, right? And I figured out, okay, this call will go on for half an hour, this call will be 10 minutes, I can do this now, I can do that later. And I started doing it differently. And I just freed up 5-6 hours, not all of it, but I freed up at least 5 hours of my cab time because I could then do all my calls in that time, and I freed up time. So when you regularly reflect, looking at your data, you ask yourself, what do I want to do? What do I not want to do? You can consciously start allocating more and less time to different things. And most importantly, what baby step can I take right now? So if you were to track your time, and let's say you figure out that you do 20 hours of coding or meetings, or 10 hours of phone calls, let's say 20 hours of coding in a week, right? And if you start doing this for a few weeks, you can kind of quantify how much work you get done every week. So you say, okay, in 20 hours worth of coding, I can get this much work done. I can guarantee you, if you do this for a few weeks, you can get the same amount of work done in 19 hours because you're measuring it, you're tracking it, you're thinking consciously about it, right? So if you can go from 20 to 19, guess what? The next week you can go from 19 to 18, right? And it continues. The question is, how much scope is there? Interestingly, there's a lot of scope. And maybe not exactly the same with every task, but there are lots of different things that happen. And a lot of time is really freeable. If I had more time, I'll tell you exactly how this works, but we can talk about that later. And it's as simple as 1 week at a time, right? Save an hour or two every week, and guess where you'll be in a few months. If you do all of this right, you can actually free up 75% of your time and even more. I mean, this is real, and I've got all the data to share with you if you want to talk. Okay. I know this is going to be very brief, right? Because we don't have much time, but I want to quickly talk through this and then come to questions and answers. This is my top 10 list of things to do with regard to how would you free up your time, or how would you manage your time better. And while I'm not going to talk through all of them, I'll just highlight a couple which I felt might be more relevant to us doing remote here. Number 5 is schedule tasks optimally. And I've seen that just doing this one thing can easily free up 20 to 30% of your time. What I mean by that is, if we think carefully about which task we want to do when, it makes things a lot easier. One of the things that we can very easily do is what I like calling bundling up tasks. So if you've got a lot of tasks of the same kind or related to the same objective or activity, you can bundle them together. Let's say I had 4 phone calls today, and let's say 1 was long and 3 was short, right? Rather than doing a 15-minute call at 10 a.m. and then another call at 12 and then another call at 3:30, which is going to disrupt my whole day, what I would do is put all those calls together, book a call room, figure out a time in the day that works, schedule them accordingly, say block a call room for an hour, do all the 4 calls one after the other, and get done with it. The other thing that scheduling tasks relates to is doing the right things, doing things at the right time of the day. So I've noticed that if I do something in the morning versus I do the same thing in the afternoon or the evening, it might take me more or less time because of the frame of mind I'm in. So this is one of my favorite ones. If you schedule your tasks optimally, you can save a lot of time. Number 6 is block time for specific tasks. This is again extremely powerful, and because it helps us to avoid distractions. A lot of times we'll sit and do something, and then we'll get a Slack message, or we'll get a WhatsApp message, or something. An email will come, or a phone call will come, or someone will come and say, "Hi, do you want to go for a coffee?" All that stuff just makes things take so much longer. Now we're all used to blocking time. If you go to the gym, you're hopefully not checking messages that time. You're just spending 45 minutes or 1 hour, whatever it is, working out. We can block time for many more things, including work stuff, right? I can tell myself for the next 2 hours, I'm just going to do this, and I'm not going to, I'll ignore my message, I'll ignore my emails, and guess what? Something that I'll take 4 hours to do, I'll actually get it done in 2 hours. Number 10 is another one of my favorites. I call this maintaining a list of 5-minute tasks. This I also found to be a super time saver. There are a lot of small things that we all tend to do. For me, it was like, I need to make note of this somewhere, or I need to, maybe make a reservation, make an appointment, or just, write that small email to somebody. So a lot of small things that we tend to do, mostly in my case, these were like admin kind of things, and I felt very annoyed when I would look at the end of the week and I'd find that I spent so many hours doing these so-called silly things, right? And often I couldn't even explain what I was doing because it was just like, I've been trying to call somebody again and again, or I've been trying to, random stuff. So what I started doing was, every day or every week, every day, actually make a list of all these silly things that you want to get done. And I call them 5-minute tasks. Sorry, they may not be silly, they may be important things, but they're those less predictable, less urgent things that'll just take 5 minutes, but then keep eating into your day, right? Just make a list of them. And anytime during the day, if you have free time, which is like, your friend's coming 5 minutes late for lunch, or, your call got done earlier, or your meeting got postponed by 15 minutes, right? Something like that happens. If you have any free time, that's when you want to pull out this list and start working on it. And what I found, if you do this, then by the end of the day, you've actually done most of those things without even realizing when you did them. Anyway, so that's 10 things to do. My favorite 10 things, most common ways to get derailed, which is what I would like to suggest. These are mistakes. These are things not to be done. I'll just highlight a few here. A lot of us now tend to believe that I just need to find the right app and I'm taken care of. What I want to say is that yes, an app will help you free up time. It can help you manage your time, but the real impact will come from actually changing your habits. There is no one app which will just do it all for you, as much as we'd like that. I'm going to jump a few points here and come straight to point 6. Here's some good news for a lot of us who feel that we need to be good at multitasking. The answer is that we don't need to be, and actually it's focused monotasking, or whatever, doing one thing at a time, which leads you to do things more proactively and hence free up a lot of your time. And another interesting one is I see a lot of us make this mistake, which is we tend to believe that what is more urgent must be higher priority. I like to distinguish very clearly about urgent things and high priority things. And it might sound a little confusing, but it comes with practice. An urgent thing is something that needs to be done immediately. Obviously, it's short term. And I like to say that priorities are actually long-term things, right? So there's, priorities don't need to be urgent. You could say, this is my priority, and you can just take out 5 hours a week or an hour a day or whatever it is on a sustained basis to get there. So, your priority is not the thing that's urgent. Your priority is something else. It might be longer term. Okay, so I won't go into all these, seeing the time. What I wanted to do is, share a piece of homework with everybody who's here. If you really want to start implementing this thing, of course, I'm more than happy to, talk to you guys, send messages on Slack or email, whatever. But this is something that if you feel moved by this little bit that we've talked and you actually want to start implementing it, this is the first thing I would suggest you do, is to actually create your own time budget. And this is the first thing you'll do in the planning step I just talked about. Here's how would you do this. There's also a one-page sheet which will be shared on the Knowledge Drop channel that David just talked about. So you'll have an entire framework which you can print out and fill in the numbers if you want. But what you would essentially do is, step one, think about how many hours you want to account for per week, right? So you're building a time budget. Just to give you a hint, this could be as low as 40, 45 hours, even 30 hours. I've seen it go, people track, 70 hours, 80 hours. So it's not 24 hours times 7 days per week. So you don't want to include your sleeping time, your free time, your time on daily chores and all those kinds of things. It's time that you feel you're supposed to be productive, right? So you want to include time that you work, or even other regular activities like time that you spend on social media, and come up with a number and just guess it for now if you have to, but just come up with a number and say, I'm going to track, let's say 50 hours a week, whatever it is. What you then want to do is ask yourself, what are the main categories where you'll spend these hours? So restrict yourself to 3 to 5 categories, and this is all there in the sheet, which will be on the Slack channel shortly. So you want to say, okay, if I'm spending 50 hours a week, what am I doing? 3 to 5 categories, right? So it could be, okay, I do a lot of meetings, I do coding, and I do emails, or I jog, so I spend time with that. So just list 3 to 5 main categories, and then estimate the time that you spend on each of those categories, right? So break up that number into these 3 to 5 categories. I'm deliberately going a bit fast, but we can always come back to this after the session. So step 3 is, once you have 3 to 5 categories, you want to then have subcategories for each of those and repeat step 2. So what I mean by that is, for example, let's say one of my categories in step 2 was meetings, and I said I spend roughly 10 hours a week on meetings. It could be phone meetings, right? So then I want to say, okay, can I break this down further? So maybe my meetings are, internal review meetings and client meetings, right? And then I want to say, okay, maybe I spend 4 hours on this and 6 hours on that. So once you do all this, review it, make sure the numbers add up. And this is what I call a time budget. It's your best sense at the moment of where you spend your time. That's a starting point, but it's a very powerful starting point. And if you are up to doing this homework, give it a shot and then check with me what to do after this. All right, I'm going to stop there and open up for questions. Feel free to contact me. I'm very, very happy to discuss this, hear comments. There's also more stuff available on this website, timeball.in. That's a tool you guys can use. I've also put together a whole online course. There's a lot of content on this website called Quadruple Your Productivity. If you want to go deep into this online course, you can reach out to me and ask me questions about that. Okay, so I'm going to stop sharing my screen now and happy to take questions.
Well, if we have any, feel free to type it in the Q&A box down there. But thank you so much, Ankur, for now. That was super, super informative. As he mentioned, I did create a Knowledge Drop Slack channel, and I invited those of you who have your last names up in there, and posted the homework sheet as well. So feel free to contact Ankur directly in there. This has been, we will be recording this and then as well posting this along with the slides as well. And I'll get the slides up really, really quick, and then the video should be up within a week or so. So for those who want to share it around, you can feel free to do so. But if we don't have any questions, I think we can just wrap it up on time and say thank you so much to Ankur. And next, in 2 weeks, we'll have Eddie Contento from Darien talking about the importance of creativity. So it should be a really interesting one. So tune in 2 weeks' time, and I'll see you guys out there on the road.
Great. Thanks, David, and thanks everyone for being here. And as I said, I don't see any questions right now, but please feel free to shoot me messages on Slack in case you have any later as well. All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Good day, everyone.